Hello everyone, Speedrun here and welcome to my fifth and last episode of ragnaCAST, your Ragnarok Online podcast series on my YouTube. On the other side of the line today I have Ai4rei. This podcast will be a little bit different as Ai4rei prefer to not be identified. Welcome Ai4rei. Please let us know a bit about yourself.
Yo, I'm Ai4rei, a self-taught software developer who prefers the company of other cats over humans, and the author of the tools Robic Light, Open Setup, and Ai4rei.
I will start this podcast by asking about your nickname. There are nicknames that call my attention, and yours is one of them. You have been using AI for much longer, before AI or artificial intelligence was even a thing. Well, what does your name stand for?
The I comes from the Japanese word for love, and the rei refers to the Evangelion character Rei Ayanami.
You are well known for coding many important applications for RO, Ragnarok Online. I want to start by asking about Open Setup, a well-known software that allows you to configure the ragnaCAST size, turn on and off BGM, and much more. It bugs me how it is even possible to set the ragnaCAST to execute differently.
The official Ragnarok Online install comes with a setup.exe utility to set graphics and sound settings before the client starts for the first time and to allow the modification later on. These settings are saved in the Windows registry and Lua files, depending on the client version. OpenSetup is like a premium version of that utility and adds options that otherwise can only be changed from within the game.
Following next, I want to know how much time did it take you to figure out and actually build Open Setup?
At the time I made OpenSetup, I already had a fairly good understanding of how the insides of the Ragnarok client and the setup utility work. So after deciding what kind of user interface I'll go with, the initial release took about a week to make and test.
I have a question that I believe you'll be the ideal person to reply. Why the author patcher warns us being harmful software and your patcher creation Ai4rei does not? Please correct me if I pronounce wrong there the patcher name. And could you also mention why you picked this name to be the patcher name?
Normally, this would be a question for the antivirus vendors and their questionable detection routines, so all I can provide are guesses. Ai4rei isn't completely without false positives either, but I sometimes react to things that upset antivirus software, such as how the built-in browser identifies itself, how the configuration is packed into Ai4rei, how Ai4rei is built and what it is built with. Tor hasn't changed since 2018, so it soaks up the reputation from the software it is distributed with, and from software built with the same compiler, which, in case of older versions, is mostly malware. In times of artificial intelligence being mindlessly put into antivirus offerings, this has become even a bigger problem. Also, 32-bit software, being an obsolete platform, has lower reputation by default. As for the name, many programmers out there will agree with me that naming things is probably the worst thing in programming. Ai4rei is no exception, and it was a long road to come up with a unique name. The first part is an abbreviation for Enhanced Launcher and Updater for RAW, and the remainder was just brute force to make it sound and look good.
When you mentioned that you are in a way a RO full stack developer, could you explain in more depth what that means, perhaps in a language that any non-developer person would understand?
Over the years, since I entered the Ragnarok emulation community in 2007, I went through all the skills related to Ragnarok programming, starting with Ai4rei scripting, Ai4rei code development, reverse engineering and patching of the client, until finally creating client-side tools of my own.
You got the development since Iatina. For those who don't know, it's an emulator before Ratina. With that said, I would like to make two questions. Any idea why was the name Iatina chosen and later Ratina? I think this never been really told to public. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Ai4rei simply means English Athena, which is a fork from J-Athena, a Japanese fork of the original Athena emulator. The name Athena comes from renewable Athena, since their focus was on renewal, both in terms of development and Ragnarok itself, the concrete details of which are also in the early news posts on their forums.
The second question for this subject is, what have you contributed for Iatina? And have you done any contribution to Ratina as well?
In the early days, I have harassed Ai4rei's core developers with bug reports until I applied for the position myself in 2010. I have been fixing bugs in the source code until Ai4rei's death in 2014. After that, I haven't contributed to Ratina nor Hercules and shifted my focus to the client side.
I have made these questions before in a different ragnaCAST with Stolau, and I also want to ask you, what is your favorite coding language?
C in C++ mode. That means what I write most of the time is technically C code, but it has to compile as C++ for type safety and to save some typing. No pun intended. What I like is that it's close to the generated assembly, so I can easily see the generated assembly from the code and vice versa. Generally, it also does not do things behind your back, so finding bugs is limited to the things you actually write.
Tell us, do you still play Ragnarok Online? Tell us briefly about your RO life.
Not anymore, except for technical reasons. I started with Euro when it was run by Borja back in 2005, but since it was pay to play and I had a tight budget, I slowly shifted to the dark side of private servers.
I got one last question. If you pick 3 games, what game would that be?
I have enjoyed Fly for Fun and Trickster in the past, now I mostly play Genshin.
I want to appreciate Ai4rei for joining me in the podcast today and for having the time to answer these questions. If you like Ragnarok Online and you haven't seen any other podcasts yet, I suggest you to have a look. There's a lot of information. It's a very interesting series. I have learned a lot and I hope you do too. Smash that subscribe and the like button. See ya!